Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this 30 October Equity Committee meeting. If you would please have a look at the minutes from our last meeting from October 2. And if you have any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I will toss it to Dr. Chapman to give us her report.
Okay. I do know that Deborah Falk is in the building, rushing in from a meeting, so I'm going to go out of order just a bit on our agenda to give her a chance to get here. Also want to introduce Jim Leonard. I'll let him tell a little more about himself, who is also here to share in the report with Deborah on Business Affairs Equity Update. Mr. Leonard, if you could use your mic. We're live.
Push the button at the bottom.
I am live. Am I up now?
Yeah.
Oh. Hi, so I'm Jim Leonard. I'm the purchasing agent for Akron Schools. I've been involved mostly, obviously, being purchasing with the spend side of the MBE effort. I've been fortunate to be included in several committees with the Greater Akron Chamber. We just recently formed a committee that meets monthly. We're meeting in November 15th, I believe, in a couple weeks. And then each month, after the first of the year as well, just talking about the challenges of the MBE efforts. Some of the other committee members, just to give you an example, City of Akron, University of Akron, officials from the purchasing side of Summit County. I believe there's a SUMA individual on the committee, but a lot of public entities which I think have the most challenges because we're restricted or dictated our purchasing processes by the Ohio Revised Code and some other legalities that the SUMAs of the world do not have. So it's a good chance to share ideas with these other individuals from the public sector. In addition, I've been involved with the Urban League. They have a very nice program with MBE. Encouragement of businesses to become MBEs, to become certified MBEs actually is their push. I was able to give a presentation in May on becoming a vendor with Akron Schools. I had business cards I passed out, and it's kind of a reverse trade fair, if you will, where the buyers like myself were at the booths and the sellers came to the booths just to learn what it took to become vendors. And in a couple weeks, November 28th, I'll be going back to the Urban League to give them just a technical demonstration, kind of a hands-on on how to access requests for proposals, current requests for proposals that Akron Schools have. We haven't posted on our website. It's not a complicated process. It's kind of a point and click, very intuitive, but we're getting the buyers of local organizations together to show the demonstration of how to get to that. I don't want to steal any of Deborah's thunder on her. I see the template is updated. There's just a couple of numbers that we're happy with. I guess the ongoing challenge, not obstacle, but challenge, is that information that we're looking for wasn't previously tracked. It's in some cases cumbersome to recreate it, but we are getting through that and getting better at that. But there's some numbers that are real encouraging on Deborah's template that hopefully you'll see. Other than that, that's all I got.
So, thank you, Jim. And Deborah, perfect timing. We were just getting into the business affairs update. Even though we have a working plan, an internal working plan document, I wanted Deborah to get to the goals that have been established within the business affairs office. So I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Thank you, Carla. Good evening. It's nice to see you all here. We have reviewed the goals for the next business affairs set. These go through September of 2024. In our Tier 1 vendor activity, the company is owned by a minority business enterprise, and we hope to increase that by 3%. Now, this is a brand new venture for us. We didn't even know what a Tier 1 was, and for us to be able to get somebody certified in in that Tier 1 class. Jim worked with myself and Dr. Chapman to make sure we understood this process, and NEPAC has been a very good partner to work with, and we hope to have it above 3% more than we currently had for 22-23 through September 24. Then there is the Tier 2 vendor activity, and these are also minority businesses. And what is truly amazing about this one, this includes Amazon, and Amazon itself has got minority Tier 2 business partners within their vast offerings that the school district takes part in. And we have seen an increase over the last year. On our first quarter, when we started this with them, we had gone up 21%. Most recently, it was 30%, but our next goal is to go 15% on top of that. Then for our minority MBEs identified, we want to increase those by another 40 to the current database. Jim currently ends up talking to every one of our vendors. And please understand, in the Munis system, some vendors are just like myself. I get paid because I may have gone on a trip. We're looking for commercial vendors that supply supplies, equipment, et cetera, to the district. So we have reached out. We've actually opened up the Munis database to allow us to record that information as they're certified. What is a little interesting about this is we have a great number of people ask the question, but they don't follow through. It's an easy process to do this. It doesn't cost them anything, but we haven't seen a lot of people go ahead and do that kind of process. So in the spirit of the law, or the request for the board to increase it, we are also trying to make sure that we know of minority businesses that are not necessarily MBEs, but they are truly part of our process, and we want to increase that as well. So therefore, we wanted to increase it by 40 over our current database, and in September 24, we want commercial vendors to be recorded and activated, and we're going to increase that by 50. One very interesting part of this is the current contracts with some of your larger commercial vendors for transportation and child nutrition have increased over the last year our spend by 77%. So that is because we now know that they're minority vendors, but they are very well large companies. And to say that we were actually able to activate that within 1 year of putting this process together, we're hoping to certainly increase our vendors, but we are seeing our spend go up nicely. So I wanted to share that with you. Jim and his staff have been very active in reaching out to new vendors as they come on. And I will advise that some of our vendors that we had before that we know are minority-owned businesses, we have not used because their services aren't currently necessarily part of the services we need. But I might see some of those resurface as the board and the superintendent work on the next construction project, which, as you know, under option 1, includes the build at the Kenmore location to deal with the Pfeiffer and Miller South relocation to that site. So there will be some vendors that we had used for OFCs you may see then surface again as those construction projects come up. So it's not that we don't want them here, it's just we haven't had an opportunity to use them once we finished out Garfield. Okay.
Are there any questions of Deborah by board members?
I have a question. So Deborah, I'm looking at the numbers here, and obviously they're great goals or great ambitions to have. You know, how did we come up with these numbers as far as what we want to increase percentages-wise and just, you know, plain numbers-wise with these vendors?
We did a couple of different analytics as we were looking through these, Mr. Joe Perry, and I just didn't mean it to do it that way. I apologize. Okay. We looked at, because we started from 0, and we went, as an example, from Tier 1, and we felt that 3%, based on what they had done, was an achievable and realistic goal. The same for Tier 2. When we got to over 100,000 for that particular set of vendors, we felt that it was already tracking currently in our first quarter of this year. We were already at close to what we did the first year, so we added the 15% because the activity is beginning to go out there and do that. And then we went ahead and added another percentage that we felt we could encourage people to do this with Jim's outreach and our ability to work with other presentations. And I've talked to the superintendent about doing an internal presentation prior to an RFP going. We always have a bid opening type meeting, not where vendors can come in and ask questions. We can ask that again. And the superintendent and I recently talked about during an internal meeting for us to do the presentation similar to what Jim is going to do on the 28th internally here so that we could go ahead and encourage those. We have just tried to make sure that they're well aware of what we have available for them to do. It's just an interesting process that the spirit is we want our minority vendors to know about us. We want to encourage them. There is one part of this that is very, very honest, and it recently was approved by the board, was the update to 6325, which was the policy regarding the spending requirements for federal grant money. And as you realize, as you recently did that approval, those requirements are very much dictated by the federal grant. And you have to follow those as part of it. And the same's with the board's policy. But that doesn't mean we don't want our vendors of all types, minority and majority vendors, women-owned businesses, not to have a full knowledge of what those requirements and spends are. But we want to encourage them, because if they don't honestly answer a request for proposal or a request to buy, then they don't put themselves in play. So those are some of the ways that we went through over the metrics that we had and are encourages us to move forward.
Mr. Perry, also, Jim Leonard, thank you, Deborah, has real numbers for you. So if you need to hear the real numbers,
Sure.
where we started and where we're going.
I am definitely interested in that.
He has
What does
that.
3% amount to?
Right.
Tier 1.
He can share that with you.
Well, I'd have to do the math for that, but
Yeah.
I can tell you what the numbers were spent. So fiscal year 22, our MBE total expenditures were approximately 1.7 million. Fiscal year 23, the next year, they were 7.5 million. That's actually a 335% increase. Now that came primarily based on identifying 3 vendors that were MBEs that we spent decent amounts of money with, 2 student transportation vendors and a food service vendor. They were big wins for us, and they've worked out very well, and obviously they've helped our expenditures. So to date, fiscal 24, we have about 1.6 million. So we have some big months coming up in the winter and spring with the transportation. So there's 2 transportation vendors that we identified recently as MBEs. That number will go back up. That caused a big jump from 22 to 23 fiscal year. So that boost, we still fully expect this spring, late winter, early spring.
Okay. Another question. So on a follow-up note, what you were saying, though, Deborah, how do we make sure these vendors know about this opportunity? It's one thing for us to have these goals and to say we want to attract more and give these numbers and make sure they're, being properly, vetted or whatever. How do we know they're getting the word of mouth? They know about this opportunity.
Obviously, we do that as part of our RFP process. When we go out and we actually put our RFPs on websites, we advertise in the public papers, and we particularly put those statements in very similar to what child nutrition is federally required to do as part of the meal program. So we've added those statements to it, and we also, when you get an RFP from us, those particular additional statements are also part of the scope of work. So those are part of the areas that we have adjusted our RFPs to this new process so that we can encourage them. And we have attended various meetings. We're members of the Greater Akron Chamber. Jim has worked with the Urban League very well in making sure that we can attend those items, and we both will and have been members of the local area groups that are now meeting more on a monthly basis. The next meeting is in November, and then there's monthly meetings starting in January. So as a group, we're trying very hard in the area to make people be aware of what's available for them to be part of.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, what Deborah said about the Greater Akron Chamber and the Urban League, we're registered as a buyer of goods and services. We're on their lists as well as they provide us lists with MB vendors, but we're on their list that they provide to the MB vendors. So in addition to attending the events in hopes of getting us some visibility, they're also promoting the partners like ourselves that utilize the goods and services.
Does that include the local NAACP?
That's a good question. I can't address that definitively. I assume they would be involved with the Urban League at the very least, but
Are you asking NAACP as a vendor or as a way to get information out?
As a way to get that
Yeah,
information.
that's a good recommendation, and we can certainly make that connection
yeah,
to Judy Hill.
Judy Hill, right? We know
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. And I think that we have done and made some good efforts and done some work here, even most recently, in identifying these goals and really thinking more intentionally about it. I've had a conversation with the superintendent who's sitting there about the need to really more deeply, on my part especially, understand how the process of RFPs work. The legal requirements, when we speak to federal policy 3265, I need to understand everything about that. And because I am not a legal scholar, I'm a different kind of scholar, but I'm not a legal scholar. The importance of having legal interpretation to better understand where the opportunities exist to allow for more access, because it always exists. But if you don't know the interpretation of those legal requirements and where the opportunities exist, we could miss some things, right? And so, in the past, I've talked about having access to someone that we can make a call to, who can help us unravel some of the legalese. And I've talked to Superintendent Robinson about that, and thankful that he has really been open to equity work throughout all divisions, which brings us back around to business affairs and the work that we've been doing for the past 3 years. So that would be one of the challenges I would put on the table, is ensuring that we are fully aware of how all things operate to support access for vendors.
I will also advise that when we are at our professional groups, OSBA, OASBO, I don't particularly have access to BASA, but the superintendent does. Some of our other professional organizations, such as the Ohio Schools Council, that we belong to, things like that, we also do have those discussions about access for all vendors of all types, and we encourage that conversation among ourselves and our colleagues, because some of the changes, to Carla's point, if there's going to be legal changes, some of those are legislatively required, or they might need a legal definition or statement from somebody so we interpret what's out there correctly.
Yeah.
So those are why it's a good conversation that Carla has brought that to the table. But it is part of the professional organization conversations that we, for the groups that we are part of, attend.
Yeah. That's a good point. And part of it is, too, what we learn, we bring back to other people, right? So we don't want to keep it to ourselves as only the knowledge that I have, but I would want for anyone who has access to support vendor opportunities to understand what could be done, because that's how we reach our goals. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about this work, because we have been working for 3 years. To get to this place. And so it's one of the things I consider to be my great frontier work. So I'm excited to see that we're moving in the right direction. So, Dr. Molnar.
I think you've already alluded to it because you said frontier work, but I see we have 4 goals here. Are we aware of other districts having similar goals? Do we know what progress or roadblocks some other districts around us might have already encountered before us?
Yes, we do. We have here in Ohio, Columbus leading the way on policy, actually, with their board around supplier diversity initiatives. So not only did they have the resolution and equity policies, but they lifted out of their equity policy a policy specific to supplier diversity, and I'd be happy to share that with you. But I'm fortunate enough to be a member of a national network of diversity and equity officers in K-12 education, and we all share the same challenges and some opportunities, and you'll hear many speak to the legislative requirements that often become a barrier, or the need to reach out to more MBE, WE vendors to ensure that they have all the information that they need to even access a bid. You hear information about bid processes themselves and how they are open enough to allow for a vendor that might not have, a large balance on their books, but may be able to provide a small segment of the RFP. So those are the kind of things we're hearing, both across the state and nationally with our network of other diversity officers.
And now I feel like if I were watching the recording, I'd rewind it. But since I can't do that right now live, back to what you started with, the presentation with the Urban League. Is this part of the training process that they will be offering?
Part of the training process, you mean as far as them training the vendors? Yes. This is a workshop for the MBE member vendors of Urban League. Actually, I shouldn't say the members. I think they invite whomever MBE vendor, and it's a training session for them. So they bring in local purchasing people like myself, like from the city of Akron, to say, okay, back in May we talked about opportunities and places where your good or service might be needed by an organization. Now in November, it's, okay, we talked to you in May, now here's how the nuts and bolts and how to get in and see our website. And it's actually going to be in a computer lab. For instance, my portion will be, okay, let's all log on to get into the Akron Schools website, and here's where you point and click to get to our RFPs. And then I'm going to actually have one in their form. We'll look at it, and I'll say, here's the submission process, et cetera, et cetera. Then I could educate them as much as say, our RFPs are advertised in a local newspaper. We send invitations to known vendors, and we're getting in a good program with them becoming known vendors to myself and to the other agencies, Akron City, et cetera, that we send them an invite that said, hey, there's a bid that's posted. You might want to go and look at it. Because I understand it's not realistic to expect them to just go to our website every day or every week. Well, I got to keep checking. There's ways to find that out that I'll talk to them about.
And when is that again? Sorry.
November 28th. It's I want to say the Tuesday after we get back from Thanksgiving. And I'm going to Florida that Thursday, so I'll be in a good mood.
Yes, you will. Dr. Robinson, did you have something, or are you just leaning in?
No, I wanted to just reemphasize what.
Can you come from
Yeah.
I just want to reemphasize what Miss Deborah was stating. So I had a meeting with her Friday. Yeah, very very detailed meeting to discuss some concerns that we have around vendors and just some of the things that maybe some people might see as just common knowledge, meaning that they just know it, but a lot of our community does not know a lot of these things, and we want to be able to share and show them how to access things, where to go, how to go by doing everything that has to be done, whether it's our buildings, whether it's the learning about the RFP process. So she's working, so not at this particular board meeting coming up on Monday, but the next board meeting, she's going to be doing a presentation to try and help our community at large to really be able to understand how to access things on our current website, because that's going to change. In terms of the website, it's going to change. But just to show them how to find things, especially around RFPs and building use and how to use the system. There's a new system. And a lot of our community, I mean, people don't go to the website every day. That's not their everyday chore, right? So we want to make sure that we put it out there. We're going to have a couple of videos that are going to go up as well, that even if people are not here at the meeting, they could at least watch the video, and it's going to, walk them through the process so that they can see how to access all of this stuff that may be new to some may not have even heard of it. But we want to make sure that they have access to all of this information, because it is a lot and it's overwhelming. So we want to make sure that it is very simple for our community to really be able to find things, to understand things. We're going to do a Q&A. So it will make it a lot easier for our community, because it doesn't matter, if you don't know the information, then it's like not having it at all. So I want to make sure, and that's what I shared with Ms. Deborah. So and I know that Urban League is also doing a very similar thing, but I'd like for us to do it here, and it come from our board. So it'll be at the next board meeting, not this one here, but the next one, because she needed time to really delve into it and really get the presentation. And we're going to review it and actually go through it to look at it from a community perspective. And, because some of this stuff, we just say it because we live in it every day, but our community doesn't live here every day. So a lot of things that we would assume that they might know or do, they may not. And we want to make sure that they understand where to go, how to find things, how to access it, and to be able to equip themselves and be prepared when opportunities do present themselves. We want them to be able to have fair chances and opportunities to be able to be considered and counted in. So, but if they don't know the information, something may come up and it's already here, or it's too late for them to go and get a particular license or whatever credentials that they might need, so that they will know in advance as opportunities present themselves, and there will be some that they may want to be a part of, that process. So that is something that we're working on.
So in other words, it'll be more user-friendly to the public.
Yes, it is going to be much more. Now, right now, I can't do a whole lot about the website. That's a whole nother discussion. But it is going to change. One day you will see a different website. But right now, we have what we have. But yes, it is going to be. We want it to be user-friendly and easy for our community to just access, rather than going through a lot of stuff, and because it is frustrating. Even though, we work here, trying to find certain things is cumbersome, and we want to make it easier for our community just to go right to it.
Thank you for that, because I think that level of transparency and access is that's equity work. That's what we should be doing. So I'm like I said, I'm really excited about this piece of work in particular, because I think we're moving and rocking and rolling on a lot of other things, right? Training and culturally responsive coaching and developing a framework around what that looks like. But this area is kind of the piece that we really want to move on, because it creates huge opportunity for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure that all of our community has the opportunity and the access. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's what counts people out, is not having the access and maybe not knowing about the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And even the point of, when I know, and I know ahead of time, that if I don't have the credentials, the training, the specialized whatever that is needed, I now know it is what's required.
Correct.
And so I'm not left out because I didn't even know that it was required.
Yes.
So it's good work. I'm thankful for that. So I'm going to keep us going. We decided that at every equity committee, as part of our team, that we would give just a little bit of what we do in our training, so that at every meeting you would get just a snippet of the flavor of what we share with staff and what we share at the Educational Service Center in Cuyahoga County and Southern Ohio and other places where we've been. So one of the things that we focus on in the work that we do across the district everywhere are our 3 objectives that you see here. And it's about laying the foundation for equity, and we gave you the handout too. It's about laying the foundation, the history of equity policy in APS, and believe it or not a lot of our staff are paying attention, like Dr. Molnar, to educational policy so that they know what has happened, what has been approved, and where we are. And then we've talked before about our focus on culturally responsive teaching. So we also wanted you to see our lovely training team members there. This idea came from one of our members, Mr. Turner, that you see there. He's a recent addition to our team, so he's learning and developing as a facilitator. We typically only showed the faces of the people who were conducting a session, and they said, well, we want them to see everybody. So folks would know that this group represents teachers, administrators, coordinators, managers. And then this history that I talked to you about, go again, Sydney. Yeah, this history, people really don't know that in 2017 in our district, Bruce Alexander brought an equity policy. They're often shocked when I say that. And we led the way in urban districts in doing that then. And then just kind of taking folks through where we are now and where we're going with our new strategic plan has been really important for people to understand how we got to where we are today. That next slide is one we facilitate heavily with staff, which generates a lot of conversation and dialogue around culture. So if you had Sociology 101, I don't know when they do the iceberg. Like, that was way too long ago for me.
Same here.
Whenever they do the iceberg of culture, this is our culture tree. And it really helps people to understand that culture exists across identities, right? And so we even have a blank culture tree exercise that we use here and allow people to identify elements of their own personal surface, shallow, and deep culture. We like the tree because roots are deep. And at that deep level, you don't change those things that could be listed there, and you see some examples. There's great emotional charge at that deep level. And if you've ever tried to pull tree roots up, you know, you probably ain't gonna do it without a backhoe, right? We talk about that shallow culture, which is often what gets us in trouble in schools when there are mismatches between staff and scholars in terms of how emotions are handled, what eye contact means, the nonverbal signals. And so we have a lot of conversation here at this shallow culture, and Yvonne Cover really led the way in developing the dialogue and facilitation content that we use to talk about this, because it really resonated with her in her school counselor role. And we talk about surface being just what it is at the leaves, right? So we like this. This is ours. We added and adapted from the Zaretta Hammond Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, and you've seen me talk about that before. But this is kind of the way we kick off a conversation in addition to our Dimensions of Diversity wheel. We have a 1-minute video that I wanted to show, which we have vetted and approved. This is one of the leaders, thought leaders, scholars in culturally responsive teaching. It's just 3 minutes, so we're just gonna.
I'm Gloria Latson-Billings, the Kellner Family Distinguished Chair in Urban Education at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My passion has always been in discovering those teachers who are able to be successful, particularly in situations where people doubt that that success can happen. So my specific work has been focused on those teachers who are successful teachers of African American students. And studying in 1989 a group of 8 amazing teachers who, despite the odds, despite the resources, were able to produce some amazing, astounding results among African American students. I began calling this work culturally relevant pedagogy. And what I was able to distill from working with these teachers is that they have a laser-like focus on 3 things: student learning, or what we now think of as academic achievement, but not just test scores, but a full range of what young people learn. The second thing they focus on is what I would call cultural competence, not learning do's and don'ts about a specific culture, but fully embracing their own culture while acquiring fluency and facility in at least one other culture. And then the third thing that I saw among these teachers is what I sometimes call the so what factor. That is critical consciousness. We teach kids lots of things, but often students will say, why do I have to learn this? What is this important for? And this critical consciousness is designed to help students say, oh, well, now that I can read, then I can read the newspaper article about this. Or now that I can compute this, I now understand why it is that we're spending this kind of money on these kinds of resources in our community. So those 3 things, academic achievement or student learning, cultural competence, and critical consciousness, really form the basis of this notion of culturally relevant pedagogy. It's exciting not only from the standpoint of the teachers I began studying in the late 80s, but that I'm seeing this replicated over in classrooms, not only throughout the nation, but around the world.
One of the godmothers of culturally responsive pedagogy and practice, but I wanted you to see how we introduce the concept. And then we go right into, will it not go? Go down. Yeah, escape, yeah. Yeah, it leads us right into then what we are finalizing as our draft, current draft, and you've seen this before. So it is now with communications. We got feedback through the month of September and heard from lots of staff about what they liked and didn't like, and it has gone back to design, and hopefully we'll be merging these 2 and bringing another model back to you as we get to finalizing our portrait of a culturally responsive educator and staff. And so that ends kind of our little snippet of training that we wanted to share, and we'd like to do this every single meeting so that you have an idea of what kind of information goes out to our staff. Any questions for me? Comments? No? Okay. DEI Advisory Committee met October 11th. This was our first meeting of the year. This is the group of, I think, 41 across the district who are helping us to monitor, develop content, pay attention to what we should be prioritizing. So at that meeting, we paid attention to professional development and adult learning of DEI learning opportunities, culturally responsive teaching practices, and we talked about opportunities for scholars to learn and develop knowledge of their district and community. The next meeting is December 13th. It is here. It begins at 8:30, ends at 1:30. We certainly, if you'd like to drop in, feel free to do that. We'd be happy to have you. It's a great group, and they're doing good work. Our employee resource group members, Angela Carter of Human Capital, Recruitment and Retention, and Christopher Martin, a Bookdale Academy principal, will represent APS. And our employee resource groups at a Kent State University teacher panel. And so they are going to be discussing how teachers can create inclusive classrooms. They specifically ask for our ERG members because they wanted that particular perspective. And the topics will include race, physical, mental ability, class, and the LGBTQ plus community. So shout out to our ERG members who are representing APS and our employee resource groups. You have our flyer that's going around Ohio right now of our cultural sensitivity training that we're going to be offering November 15th in Cleveland. And I think Mr. Perry mentioned it at the last board meeting. We just wanted to give you the final version there. We're excited. Hopefully people are signing up and we'll have a good group and people will take our information from APS and use it where they work in their own districts. And then finally, our last thing is Wilma has an update on work that she's going to be taking part in.
Yes, it's called the Intercultural Development Inventory, and I actually will begin my coursework to become a qualified administrator in this during the week of November 15th. It's a 3-day session. It's a virtual session. And so some of the things you see there, I'm not going to read the whole document to you, but there's some things highlighted that I wanted to share about this inventory that I'm going to be a part of. And it's about why IDI. And so in the first paragraph there, it does tell you that it's a theory-based developmental instrument that's used in a comprehensive way, cross-culturally, in the theory of intercultural competence. And so along with that, it is also a theory-based assessment that measures both one's mindset and skill sets, which allows individuals and groups to better understand successes and challenges related to their intercultural interactions. Developmental, the way it's developed, it's developed in an assessment of ways to look at intercultural competence, which empowers individuals and groups to increase their effectiveness in how they engage cultural differences. It also provides practical and in-depth information, which represents valid qualitative and quantitative information about how individuals and groups engage cultural differences in their day-to-day interactions with others. And then along with that, the results are actually actionable results from having this profile done. The group profile results can be used to inform and shape the focus of developmental opportunities for teams, departments, and organizations. And it also has a wide application where it could be used for baseline assessments in your organization or as a preset assessment in program evaluations. And it is noted that it's a valid measure of intercultural competence where the IDI is trustworthy and consistent in a consistent way to evaluate how well someone can navigate and engage with diverse cultures in a way that is meaningful and effective. So that's just a brief overview of what the next 3 days in November, the week of the 15th, that I will be experiencing. And hopefully at our next meeting, I'll have information that I can share with you from that.
Yeah. So we've been using the IDI since 2018 in the district when I became a qualified administrator. And at that time, our senior leaders actually took the IDI assessment, as well as some coordinator manager levels, all school counselors, the I Promise School and its entire staff, and Miller South in part. And we are moving through the district systematically, because the question of, well, how do you know people are growing in their intercultural competence? How do you measure it? What kinds of tools could we use to just give us some insight into mindsets and approaches in dealing with cultural differences and how we deal with commonalities, right? So we like this tool. It is relatively inexpensive as expense goes, but we like that it is actionable, evidence-based and research-based. So, yeah, more to come. Counselors are going to come on board soon through the work of Stephanie Hammond here in the district, who is our counselor manager, wanting to do some work in this space with school counselors, especially as we think about our cornerstone of the culture of safety and sense of belonging, right? Having our mindsets right to be able to provide the right type of environment is really important. So that's a lot, but here's what I'm trying to do now, because I know I give a lot. I have been warned that I give a lot. I don't know, it's a personality thing. I don't know what it is. I give a lot. So this update, this one page front and back, it says Equity Committee updates. It is linked in the board agenda for you. And we're going to use this format for equity updates moving forward, so you have a easier way and a place to see everything in one place. So if you're okay with that, this will be the way we provide the updates for you to share at the board meetings. Okay. Mrs. McKittrick, I have nothing else unless there are some board questions or updates, concerns from the board members.
Anybody?
No. I'm definitely interested in hearing your presentation on the vendors, though, in a few weeks, Deborah. I would definitely want to hear that for sure. That's very important to me, so looking forward to that.
Because information is only good if people have access to it, right?
Access is everything.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. We're going to wrap it up then. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for reporting out. We look forward to your presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.